Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is our second training for Democracy Day, which is on January 20th, next Tuesday, to support good governance bills. And as you know, our General Assembly starts on Wednesday, so it's a pretty exciting process. A lot of new delegates. So what we're going to do is I have a few speakers here. I'm Nancy Morgan. I'm Big Money Out. We support campaign finance reform, good governance, and including ethics reform. So what we're going to do is we're going to just we're going to cover the bills, basically the good governance bills, like campaign finance, ranked choice voting. And Jane Newell is here from the League of Women Voters. She's from Richmond. She's going to talk about the National Popular Vote Compact, which is pretty exciting. We have Liz White, who is the executive director from UpVote Virginia. She's going to talk about the ranked choice voting bills. So anyway, I just want to say put all your comments and in the chat so that we can have a discussion. Meanwhile, I'm just going to go to Liz first. And Liz, what's happening with ranked choice voting? What can we expect from the next General Assembly?
Right. Well, hopefully we can expect some progress. I'm going to share my screen really quick just so I can take you all through um, what ranked choice voting is, a real, brief description of kind of what it is and how it works, what our bill does specifically, a little bit about why we advocate for it, and why it's part of this good governance unified lobby day. Um, and then a little bit of how we recommend talking about it in a day like Democracy Day. So everybody can see my bright chartreuse screen. Okay, great.
Correct.
Okay, so what is ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting is a simple change to the ballot that brings about a better voter experience, better campaigns, and better elections. And we believe that ultimately leads to better government. All it means for voters is instead of selecting your one favorite candidate, and that's all you get to do, with ranked choice voting, you get to say, this is my first choice, but this is my second choice, my third choice, my fourth choice, etc. That's it. We know
That's
the
it.
rank.
We know the rank.
We as
We as
people rank
people
all
rank
the time.
all the
If
time.
a restaurant
If
or a
a
grocery
restaurant or
store
a grocery
is
store is
out of, can
out
you
of
mute? I'm sorry, I'm
mute, I'm
echoing.
sorry, I'm echoing.
Um,
Sorry,
Sorry,
can everybody
can everybody?
mute themselves except for Liz?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. These things just get so echoey. Um, so we rank every day, right? I have two children. If you ask any small child what their favorite color is, they're going to give you their top three. If you go to the grocery store looking for ice cream and they're out of your favorite flavor, you pick your second choice. We all know how to do that. It ends up being very intuitive for voters, but it ends up having a huge impact on elections and on how we collect information on voter preference. So I'm going to go through a little bit of how it works. So there's two kinds of ranked choice voting that are currently allowed in any context in Virginia. Mostly what we talk about is called instant runoff voting, and that is how you use ranked choice voting in an election for one person, right? You're electing a mayor or a delegate or a congressperson, a governor, etc. So one person. And when you're electing one person to represent an entire electorate, mathematically, the best floor we can put in place is 50% plus one vote. The best we can ask for is that the person being elected to represent all of us at least has support from more than 50% of us, which doesn't seem like an unreasonable expectation, but is not how elections work now. In Virginia, it's usually primaries where we see these very crowded fields. Sometimes it's a local election, mayor or city council, etc. But once you get more than two people in a race for one office, it's very likely that someone is going to win that nomination or that position with 20 something percent, 30 something percent, maybe 40 something percent. And I'll get to some visuals and we'll talk about what alternatives are to that and how that doesn't really serve voters very well. But assuming that we're talking about this kind of ranked choice voting where we're electing one person and the majority threshold is the goal. This is how it works. So as a voter, you show up, you say this is my first choice, second choice, third choice, etc. You're done. Your whole job is done. You get to go home. Then we start tabulating. Everybody, the tabulation software, I say we, but really it's a computer, counts up all the first choice votes. And if one of the candidates has gotten over 50% of the first choice votes, they win. People get to go home early. It was really easy. They were a runaway favorite. We have all the information we need. But if you look at things like the most recent lieutenant governor race or a lot of these crowded primaries, several congressional primaries, think ahead of what 2028 is going to look like in the presidential primaries, just huge fields of candidates. It's pretty unlikely that someone has 50% of first choice votes. So here's where the ranked choice voting part comes in. Whoever has the fewest first choice votes is eliminated. If that's your candidate, if that was your first choice, now your vote's going to go to your second choice. And we're going to continue that process, that instant runoff process, until someone crosses that 50% threshold. So here's what that looks like with pictures. This is a four-person race. Imagine it's a primary. Turquoise has about 44% in this example. And I think, speaking for all of us, just as a Virginia voter, we are so used to these plurality elections that I think most of us would look at this and say, ooh, 44% in a four-person race, that's pretty good. It's way more than 25%. That's pretty impressive. But without ranked choice voting, this graph is all of the information that we get. So we do not know how 56% of voters feel about candidate turquoise. We know 44% prefer that candidate to others, but we don't know how the other 56% feel. Maybe turquoise is perfectly palatable to them, just not their first choice. Or maybe turquoise is anathema. Maybe turquoise is just absolutely not. We have no way to know. But with ranked choice voting, we can find out and we can identify the best representative of this electorate. So we're going to, in this example, we're going to eliminate dark purple. We're going to see where those votes go. Dark purple's voters, it turns out, are pretty evenly split in this very simplified example. And half of them go to lilac and, well, and a little more than half go to turquoise. So turquoise is almost at that 50% mark, but not quite. So we're going to keep going. We're going to eliminate orange. We're going to redistribute orange's votes. It turns out, again, in this fairly simplified example, turquoise has well over 50% of the vote. Turquoise now has a mandate. Whatever party's running this primary now has a candidate everyone can get behind. Everyone's had a say. Everyone's gotten to weigh in. Ranked choice voting has been shown to mitigate negative campaigning. It is, especially in a primary, as good for the parties as it is for voters. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen a little bit and I'm going to talk about, well, entirely. And I'm going to talk about what we're trying to accomplish this session. There's one ranked choice voting bill in the Senate and its mirror in the House. We only have a Senate bill number. I'm sure that Nancy and Jane and Bill will also talk about how anyone waiting on bill numbers right now is probably in a bit of a limbo. They're just running, I think, a little behind. We'll have them all by Wednesday or when we need them. They're coming. It's okay. But we do have a Senate bill. It is SB 176, and that is patroned by Schuyler Van Valkenburg. There will be an identical bill in the House. It will be patroned by Delegate Katrina Carlson from Charlottesville. Van Valkenburg is from Henrico. We already have chief co-patrons and regular co-patrons ready to go in both chambers. So we will update that list in anticipation of next Tuesday. What the bill does, well, let me start with what our goal is and then talk about how we're going to get the bill there. So, our goal is to expand the existing ranked choice voting law a little bit. Right now, there was a bill passed in 2020. It's a 10-year pilot program, so it expires in 2031. And it allows cities and counties to adopt ranked choice voting for their city council elections or county board of supervisor elections. So just those local governing bodies. What we are trying to do is get a bill that would expand that local option to any local or constitutional office. So if, say, Arlington, who already uses ranked choice voting for their county board elections, say they also said, yeah, you know what we really also need is we need to use this for school board and we need to use this for sheriff. But then, you have Norfolk City who maybe says, okay, but we need it for city council and we have a mayor and no one ever runs for school board or we have an appointed school board but we need it for Commonwealth's attorney. Every locality is different. We're just looking to give them a bigger menu of options and let them pick for themselves how to use this in a way that makes sense to them. What the bill currently does, we're very close. The bill currently has added in town councils. So now it would be city councils, county boards of supervisors, and town councils. It puts in place a lot of great best practices in like the election administration part of this. Locks those in, codifies them. All of that is important and good. It also takes out that expiration date, which is huge. It would make this permanent, and that's lovely. Gives all of us advocates a little more time to get this really going in Virginia. Bills are not finalized. There's just a lot of opportunities in the process where they can substitute and they can amend and they can. So we're not giving up hope yet that we can get this bill to be at the scope we want it to be. We're having a lot of conversations, and I know session starts in 2 days, but truly this time of year, every hour is like dog years. Like there's still a lot of time to get things done. So we will give you up-to-date information. We will not send you out to talk to legislators not knowing exactly what is in the bill you're advocating for. So I promise to inform you. Um, Happy to take questions about any of that. One other thing I do want to say is that we've talked on the last training call and we've talked kind of amongst ourselves. We want to make sure that when you go talk to a legislator, you have some background information on their history with our issues. So you don't waste your time really selling ranked choice voting or campaign finance or national popular vote really hard to, like, the patron of the bill or something like that. We want to make sure that you're matched, that your talking points are well matched with your audience, whether it's the legislator or their staff. Um, and also so your group can kind of balance how you allocate the time. If there's someone who's really good on, let's say, campaign finance, but they don't know a lot about ranked choice voting, great. Maybe that particular meeting, whoever the ranked choice voting person is in your group, needs a few more minutes to just delve into some of the basics. Most likely, because there's so many campaign finance bills, it's going to be the other way around. Or you might just have somebody who is really an ally on all of this, and your job then is a little different. It's to thank them for their support. It's to maybe help push them to the next step. Maybe they're going to vote yes, but you could ask them to co-patron. Maybe it's just listening. A lot of times, lobbying is just listening. It's just saying, what do you think about this campaign finance bill? What are your questions about national popular vote? What do you think about ranked choice voting? And then hearing what they have to say. Don't worry, they will all talk. They will all fill that time. And we have a session built into the day where it's like a report back session. And you all get to come back to us and say, well, here's what this person said, and here's what this person's question was. It is incredibly helpful to us. That's actually, I realized today, probably the most important, the part of the day where I learn the most. So don't feel, I don't know how many of you are relatively new to this, but one, Thank you for coming to this. Thank you for coming to a lobby day. These are so important, not because 100 experts show up, but because 100 people who care show up. And you're not the people who walk those halls every day. You're not the people who are paid to be there. You're not the leaders of organizations. You're just Virginia voters who care. So showing up in big numbers is really important, and showing up authentically is important. It is much more effective to say two sentences about why you care about these issues and why you decided to come to Richmond at the crack of dawn on a cold Tuesday than it is to make sure you got through all the talking points. So you are already so impactful by being here. You don't have to be an expert on these issues. We have experts. I'm in that building most days. Campaign finance folks are there. National Popular Vote folks are there. We're there. If they have nitty-gritty questions, they can find us. Your job is to be there as a validator. So don't feel like you have to have the answer to every question. That's a huge burden that we do not expect you to take. Um, and realize I think that we're showing up as a coalition, and that's pretty special. A lot of these lobby days are very single issue focused or single organization focused. And this is a coalition of people who just want to strengthen democracy. And if ranked choice voting is not your issue, that's okay. You're in the room and you're there for other things that kind of are in the same flavor of advocacy. And again, where you being there is so important to upvote and to ranked choice voting and to me. And whether you say a word about it or not, it doesn't matter. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. I'm going to put my some information and my email in the chat in case anybody has follow-up questions. But then I'm going to pass it back to Nancy.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. That was great. In fact, I think one of the most impactful statements that I've heard about ranked choice voting was when I was on a panel and somebody said it's so complicated. My friend who was from Alaska was there in the audience and she said, we tested out with kindergarteners with M&Ms and it works. And also in Alaska when they adopted it, one Republican said, but this is a threat to the parties. And I said, I think that's good. But we do have Just Coop, my ex-Peace Corps, we were together in Peace Corps Togo, has a question saying, we have a Democratic GA. Is there more or less or relatively even political support across parties for RCV, which is an
Yeah,
interesting question.
it is an interesting question. And Rebecca, you are not wrong. The RNC, like the National Republican Party, it is in their platform that they oppose ranked choice voting. There are several states, all Republican led, who have outlawed ranked choice voting. None of them actually had ranked choice voting, but they like preemptively banned it. Um, it's become a bit of a buzzword in the election integrity, voter fraud kind of vein. Um, some folks have good faith concerns, and some folks have Heritage Foundation funded bad faith concerns. In Virginia, actually the most prominent use in Virginia's recent history of ranked choice voting was in 2021. The Republican Party of Virginia used ranked choice voting to nominate Glenn Youngkin and Winsome Sears and Jason Mears. It was an unassembled convention. It was a party-controlled primary, so they had the ability to choose their methodology, and that's what they chose to do. And it's the only time they've won statewide in, the last 12 years. So it clearly worked out well for them, um, which kind of makes it weird in Virginia. We do have allies on the Republican side of the aisle. I think we might actually get more Republican votes this year than we have before because they don't have a Republican governor to answer to because Glenn Youngkin vetoed a very narrow ranked choice voting bill 2 years in a row. And I don't even think that had to do so much with his own personal feelings about ranked choice voting and more to do with national ambitions, guidance from the RNC, um, partisan tensions where he just didn't feel the need to sign anything put in by a Democrat. Um, but we do have some good allies on the right in this fight who just see this as useful, just see this as a useful tool, especially in a primary, in either a local election or a primary, which is really all we advocate for, is this local option, letting localities use this in primaries or generals in a way that works for them. Oh, and eventually, what we'll hopefully push for next session is giving the parties the option to use ranked choice voting in their primaries. And again, we're not forcing anybody to use it, but we are putting that tool in the toolbox to be helpful.
Thanks,
Out of the
Lynn.
goodness of our hearts.
That's that's really great, and it's really exciting. We have almost 130 people registered for Democracy Day, and we're going to meet with Republicans. So I think that talking point that Youngkin was elected through ranked choice voting is really important to convey. So, Jane, if you don't mind, I'm just going to do a quick overview of campaign finance bills, and then we'll go on to the national popular vote. So let me just show this, which. Here's a presentation, and I just wanted to start off with, John McCain's statement, which I think is just so true. This was in 1999, before when he was running for office. Our campaign finance system is nothing less than an elaborate influencing peddling scheme in which both parties stay in office by selling the country to the highest bidder. I mean, this is a Republican. It's honest. He went on to do the McCain-Feingold bill in 2002. But that's nationally. And we talk about Citizens United, independent expenditures, all this stuff, the crypto industry, but when you turn to Virginia, the money in our political system has nothing to do with national policies. It has nothing to do with Citizens United. We are a statistical outlier in terms of pay to play. We have no dollar limits of any type of campaign contribution, no limits on contributions from corporations. And in fact, federally, corporate donations have been banned since 1907. So the Tillman Act that was passed by Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican. So, but basically, 22 states have that. 20 have bans. 23 have some type of limits, but the sky is the limit in Virginia. No disclosure of dark money, poor absolutely, I wouldn't even say poor. They have no regulatory oversight in terms of money. And when we started, and I'll just give you a little anecdote because my colleague Jeff Coop is here from, we were Peace Corps volunteers in Togo in the 1980s. And we were started this about 8 years ago. And one time he said, well, we were working on Citizens United with American Promise. And I remember him in a meeting saying, shouldn't we look at Virginia? And we all looked around at it saying, we don't know anything about Virginia policy. And it was lo and behold, Virginia is seriously, it's one of the most corrupt states in terms of transparency, accountability to its citizens. We commissioned a poll by the Washington Center, and we were sort of biting our nails because we have no money. We don't want money. We just want people. But we did pay $4,000 for this. And actually, the numbers came out supporting the national average. 78% of Virginians, irrespective of party, think that the large donors have too much influence on our elections, and 88% want all public contributions to be disclosed. And just Bob Shippey knows this. Bob ran for office, and Bob knows all about money and politics. It has the highest cost of elections in the country, and you just have to look at you. I mean, seriously, the last general election in the House of Delegates. I mean, it was a record. It was $100 million. There were I don't want to talk, I won't give names. But one candidate who wasn't even in a competitive race generated $6 million, a lot of it from Dominion Energy, which is the largest corporate donor. It's not the corporate donor, it's the largest donor. It's given $15 million in terms of contributions to people in both sides of the party. So, and then the governor's election was $147 million. So we basically have one of the highest cost of elections in our country. And I took some money I didn't take money. I took data from Open Secrets, which is a national group look with following the money. And when I took the data and I compared the cost of elections for General Assembly legislators across the country, when you took it on a per capita basis, Virginia at $22 per capita had the highest. And when you disaggregated the data, if you look at people giving less than $10,000 a year to a candidate it was like 4% of total contributions. I mean, what that data says is basically the Virginian citizens have been losing their voice. And that's why we need to go down to Richmond and say, despite resistance by incumbents who benefit from this current system, we need change. And it's interesting that in 2020, the Coalition for Integrity came out with the Swamp Index, and Virginia rated 46 out of 50 just in terms of ethics and campaign finance based on transparency and accountability to its citizens. Basically, our message is we think we can do better. So last year we had like 24 bills. This year as Liz says, everybody's struggling because there's a really delay in dropping the bills. But we do have some bills. We have improved public campaign finance information portal, which is Delegate Kresick. That bill actually went through the House unanimously, went through the PNE and the Senate, and then it was killed by the Democrats who said, let's pass it by. They were the same ones who voted for it in the PNE committee. Seriously, I'm not pointing, maybe I am pointing fingers, but it's like, seriously, this is a low-hanging fruit. Disclosure, the use of AI use in election ads, that bill actually went through the House, went through the Senate all the way, and it was vetoed by the governor. And I think we were seeing what's coming out of Washington, even in the last Virginia elections, the use of AI. If you're doing it in an election ad, you should disclose it. And then limits, Dana Carome, we're struggling, because she had said she was going to do a ban on corporate contributions, which she did last year. For the first time, it was amazing. We were stunned. It actually went through the Privileges and Elections Committee onto the floor of the Senate. And let me just point out, it was killed by the Democrats without a vote. They have this interesting thing, pass it by for the day, pass it by for the day. And I don't know, we're working, Danica Rome said she's going to do rather than that, she's going to do the contributions coming from public service corporations, meaning Dominion, meaning a monopoly, should not be allowed to don't use its revenues to donate to candidates, which I think has more of a possibility than the ban on limit. But there are another limits bill. Saddam Salim from the Senate said he'll introduce something. Let me just tell you a horror story. David Bulova drafted a bill, and Bob Shippey was part of this. He drafted a bill, and we sent it to Dominion, and Dominion Energy said, yeah, we need a moratorium on our money arms race. And Clean Virginia looked at it, and then all of a sudden, Dominion Energy came back and said, well, we really need support from leadership, which was like a stab in the heart. And I can tell you, okay, fine. Maybe leadership didn't support it, but they didn't even allow it to be heard in committee. So basically, that's the way they killed votes. And I'm sorry, when the Republicans had the House of Delegates, we would go sit up at 7 o'clock in the morning and we'd sit there and we'd testify and support a campaign finance bills. And then they'd kill them 5-3, 5-3. You felt like you're having whiplash, but at least they voted on the bills. And that's the thing, the message that we need to send to legislators. Fine. If you don't like a bill, then vote on it. Be public about your own opinion. Anyway, that's a message that we really need to say. Just have some transparency here. Public financing of elections. This is for local jurisdictions like ranked choice voting. We're going to go in at the democracy incubator thing started at a local level. And Jennifer Carroll Foy is going to carry it in the Senate, but we haven't seen the bill drop. And then there's a really interesting Jackie Glass and this is way too complicated for what Citizens United did. It's all about corporations. So what Montana is doing, they're having a referendum on saying, rather than saying it a campaign finance issue, they're saying we control corporation laws in our state. So we're going to just change the corporation laws to say you cannot donate for political elections, which is a referendum. But luckily, Jackie Glass said somebody from the somebody had sent her a copy of a bill that they're introducing in New York, and she said, "Hey, leadership doesn't like it, but I'm going to introduce this bill. So we'll see. Will they docket it? Will they not?" And then we were looking at ethics reform, and we're trying to find a patron. So just some other good governance bills. Obviously, we're ranked choice voting and national popular vote. We'll hear from Jay Newell about that. I just wanted to say, in anticipation of Democracy Day, and my colleague Bill Millhauser will be talking about the schedule for Democracy Day, some tips for lobbying, some of the documentation. I just wanted to let you know that we have a list of good governance bills, including campaign finance, ranked choice voting, access to the ballot, and you'll have this one-page thing that each legislator, you'll get a copy, all the legislators will get a copy saying these are the bills that we support. And then we're developing these one-page briefs for um, uh, uh, every single bill. For example, AI use in political campaigns. It's sort of talking points. If you want to talk about it, if the legislator says, "Hey, I don't know, could you have anything more about this?" You can give them, and then we'll have all these resources are on our website. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming for Democracy Day. This is pretty exciting. I guess democracy is the flavor of the month or the year, which is just fantastic. Here are some pictures from last year. You can see Jennifer Boysko that actually was a champion of the bill. It took 12 years. Virginia has Jane Newell can run for office. I can give her $1 million and she can spend it on a house. It took 12 years to pass that bill, and it did pass. So there's Adam Eben will be testifying, and in the afternoon we'll all be going to the Senate P&E committee that meets in the afternoon. They may not be hearing some of our bills, but they probably will be hearing the constitutional amendments, which I think is a pretty cool thing. That's pretty historic to be there in that moment. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Jane. Jane, do you want to tell us something? Unless there's some questions about, we can take questions maybe at the end. But Jane, you want to talk about National Popular Vote Compact, which is pretty exciting. You're muted, Jane, if you want to. Jane, we can't hear you.
Apparently, you cannot unmute while you're sharing. Sorry. Okay, hopefully the technology is now working and you can see my slide and hear me at the same time. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. I can do a 40-minute thing on this, but I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm assuming this audience is a little bit more well-versed on elections and how things work. So the current electoral system is based on Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, which has each state selecting electors to elect the president and vice president. All other races, local, state, are done in a different manner, and we're the only country that does it this way. And this grew out of the 1787 Constitutional Convention, when they could not come to an agreement on how the president would be selected. The southern states that had a large number of enslaved persons wanted the enslaved persons counted and as three-fifths of a person. So this got pretty ugly. But it's generally believed that had they not compromised and created the Electoral College, at that time, the southern states would not have joined. this is James Madison. There was difference of opinions even within Virginia. Madison was all for one person, one vote. He wanted the people, the voters, to select, but he acquiesced, like everyone else in the South, to using the Electoral College, which is simply saying that there are 538 electors because that is the number of representatives plus the number of senators plus the 3 electors in DC. Virginia has 13 electors because we have 11 representatives and 2 senators. Who wins? It's the person who reaches 270 electoral votes, not the majority of the national votes. So there are problems with this. The first problem, perhaps being obvious, and we all know that sometimes the candidate who wins is not the one with the popular vote. 2 of these, even within my lifetime, I voted in 2000 and 2016. These people really were not elected by popular vote to the presidency, yet they took office. There have been a few near misses as well as these. 2004 and 2020 were very close. And even though the national vote did end up identifying the president in those races, it was very close. In one case, when Rutherford B. Hayes was running, the compromise that had to be put in place because the Electoral College just wasn't getting there ended up ushering in the Jim Crow era and ending Reconstruction and pulling the troops out of the South. Problem number 2, really, it's only a small number of battleground states who determine who becomes president. This was 2020. This is 7 states. Those that aren't battleground states believe that the voters believe their votes don't matter, and it leads to voter apathy. In states that are decidedly red or decidedly blue, all those who vote the other way, votes really don't count because the states are presenting their electors for one candidate. In Virginia, 46% of the votes. In 2024, their votes really did not count. Problem 3, candidates in their campaigns focus on the battleground states, and other states are just spectators. And unfortunately, that number of states is getting smaller. 7 in 24, but there were more in 2020 and going back further. Virginia was at one time considered a swing or battleground state, but no longer. So why is this a problem? Well, the presidential campaigns woo the battleground states. They hear the concerns of those states, and they get the rewards from federal government and incumbents. The campaigns end up ignoring a great many of the voters. Problem number 4, not all votes are equal. We hear that Wyoming is supposed to have clout because it has 3 electors, even though it has less than a million citizens. But each one of those electors votes for 192,000 citizens, where in California, of their 54 electors, each one votes for 731,000. So the electoral votes are really not equal. So why not fix this by abolishing the Electoral College? Well, that requires a constitutional amendment, which requires 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate. They could not agree by 2/3 vote to go to lunch today. And then ratification by 38 states. So this is not a bad approach. It's just a very long, tiresome approach. There is an additional way, and that is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact can guarantee the winner is the one with the most votes nationally and ensure that every vote counts. The League of Women Voters has supported abolishing the Electoral College for over 50 years and the use of national popular vote for over a decade. There is precedence for doing things at the state level first, and that is suffrage. Even though the constitutional amendment did not go into effect until 1920 that permitted voting for women, all these gray and white states in this newspaper article women were already voting, at least in some elections. So starting at the state level and then later fixing the Constitution, it does have precedence. So what is the Interstate Compact? It's just a legal agreement among states to award each state's electoral votes to the presidential and vice presidential candidates who win the national popular vote. That's all it does. Polls show that 2/3 of Americans really want the election of the president to be by popular vote. In 2020, Virginia did a poll, and 61% of Virginians who were polled said they wanted election of the president by popular vote. So I'm going to skip over some because everybody likes to see the map. The green states have already passed the national popular vote. You'll see some, and all the states are sized based on their number of electors. So you see Maine up here with only 4, tiny little state, California over here with 54. So you can see that a lot of these were small states. So, but some are large and some are medium-sized. Those that are orange, it has passed in one legislative chamber, but not passed completely. So Virginia is among those. You'll see other orange. The yellow state passed in both chambers and was vetoed. So, that's all that we need this year is for it to pass in both houses and not be vetoed. We already have 209 of those 270 electoral votes in those states that are green on this map. So we only need 61 more, and we can add 13 of those. Now, what's the opposition to this? There are lots of myths. Without the Electoral College, our presidents would be chosen by big states. The math does not work that way. This was 2012, and it took 39 states by popular vote to come up with a popular vote. In this case, it was Obama, to actually elect the president. I've done this for other years as well, and it's around 40 states before you actually get enough to give a majority to or plurality to one over the other. Electoral College myth number 2, the president would be chosen by big cities. Well, this chart on the right side, the 50 largest cities in the country only represent 15% of the population. They couldn't possibly elect the president themselves. This one is really amazing. It's that the small states have clout today and they would lose that. But remember, clout is really assigned to those who are the battleground states, not all of these 8 states that only have 3 electors. That's 24 total electors. Since I think this is from 2008 forward, they only had 1 campaign visit in a presidential election year in 8 states. Whereas Wisconsin, a state that only has 10 electoral votes, had 58 campaign visits. Why? Because they're a battleground state. They have to come and speak to Wisconsin and hear what Wisconsin has to say. Then the silliness about only one party can win in this. Well, if you only have to look at 24 and 20 to see that either party can win by popular vote. The important thing too, well, some are saying that this is going to be a real mess and it's going to take longer and there's no way we can get it done. There's no change to the way we elect the president. People go to the same polling place. They fill out a ballot just as they do today. Those ballots go through the same equipment that we are using today. They are counted, tallied locally and certified locally, certified by the state. And then the only change is what happens in December. On the first Tuesday after the second Wednesday in December, when the electors vote. The electors that will vote will be the ones supporting the candidate with the national popular vote total that is the highest. And then we all know what happens in January 6th. So what does Virginia have to do? We have in the past, we actually got it out of the House of Delegates in 2020, but it did not make it through the Senate. And this year we're making sure that it starts in both houses. We hope, although we have numbers for neither house at this point. So, fingers crossed, nothing screws up in the legislative information system. So it's been introduced quite frequently, but this year it needs to get actually out of both houses. And we're confident that the incoming governor will not veto it. I'm going to skip over this. For more information, there is a web page on the league's website, and also scads of information on the National Popular Vote. The national organization's website is full of information. What we'll have on Democracy Day is a one-pager that by that time should have bill numbers in it. We certainly hope. We're expecting Senator Eben in the Senate and Delegate Price to be the ones who are chief patrons on the bills. And they are collecting other patrons as we speak. And I've been promised I will have the Senate bill number tomorrow.
Thanks, Jane.
We also have a little rack card that we're printing up, so we'll have that available on Democracy Day as well.
Thanks. And just from what I understand, Adam is leaving the Senate, but he's not leaving until the 14th of February, so he will introduce it. There's not a problem. And then see a price on the House side.
Right.
So,
and if it gets through the Senate by crossover day when he leaves, it can just, proceed to crossover.
yeah, and I'm hoping, that some in the P&E committee, I think they'll probably hear the constitutional amendments first. But anyway, thanks for that. I don't see a lot of questions. Let's go to Bill quickly to talk to us about what to expect on Democracy Day. And I'm putting in the chat, we have a resource document with some of the bills and the Democracy Day schedule that Bill's going to be talking about.
Hi, everyone. I just want to run through the general schedule for Election Day, and I'm going to share my screen here. And okay, so as Nancy mentioned, we have over 100 people registered to come to Democracy Day. And what we've done is try and organize teams of 8 to 10 or 11 people per team that will focus on certain geographic areas around the state so that we really get the highest number of contacts between people coming and either their delegate or their senator or both. So we will have these teams set up. And I'm just going to, first of all, talk a little bit about the teams. We'll have a team leader, and that person will have a number of responsibility. One is just keeping track of the schedule, making sure we're on time, getting to meetings, knowing where the the meetings are, and making sure that all happens, and also getting an understanding for each of the team members and what each team member brings to the discussion. And for example, if there's one or two people who really know a lot about ranked choice voting, we'll encourage those people to speak in certain meetings, and also we'll encourage the constituents to talk directly to their legislators about the issues that we're concerned about. The team leader will also provide an overview at the beginning of the meeting with each of the legislators, talking about what our group is, what are the groups that are the members of our Democracy Day team, generally what kind of bills we're supporting, and then we'll have a deeper discussion where every member of the team will be able to speak up and provide their views. And as Liz pointed out, it's really important for you to be authentic. Bring your own personalized perspective on why you think these bills are important, what upsets you about the current situation, and why do you think these bills need to be passed. The other key point is these meetings are only going to be about 15 to 20 minutes, so we have to move very quickly. So each team has to sort of work out their internal dynamics about who's going to be taking the lead and speaking with certain delegates or senators on what type of issues are going to be discussed. And again, as Liz pointed out, some of the people we're talking with, they'll be pretty strong supporters of maybe one of our initiatives, but maybe not the other. So maybe we don't need to talk in depth about every issue and every bill with every legislator. And we'll try and provide that information and share it among the team before we go out every day. So I'm going to just run through the schedule here for Democracy Day, give you a sense of what we're trying to do and when we're going to do it. First of all, on Monday night, we're going to have a happy hour at the Tobacco Company, which is a nice little cozy place to have a drink and get to meet people. I think about half of the people have signed up to go to the happy hour. It's an optional activity, and please come if you can. Okay, so our main base of operations for the day is St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and here's the address. And we're going to be doing most of our activities here in terms of organizing the day. And then we're going to the General Assembly building where all the legislators have offices. It's a new building that's 3 or 4 years old. It's much better than the old building where all the legislators were located. And it's about a block and a half from the church. So it's a very easy walk to get to the General Assembly building. We'll also be spending some time at the Capitol, in the gallery, in the Senate or the House, where we'd like people to get to these the galleries around 11:30, so that we can be recognized in both of the galleries by one of the senators and one of the delegates. And it's a nice opportunity to show everyone the size of our group. So let me just come back and go through the schedule in more detail. We'll be open for business around 7:30, and we're going to have breakfast provided. It's going to be bagels and cream cheese, and we're going to have fruit, optional fruit, and of course we'll have coffee and water. We'll then provide an overview of the day's activities. We'll go over some of the things we've talked about today, answer questions. If we have more details, we're obviously going to provide those to you. And then we're going to want to take a big group picture. We've had a lot of fun trying to get everybody up against one side of the room to take pictures, and it'll be a very impressive group. We're going to try to go to the General Assembly between 9 and 9:15. And one of the issues, although we're very close to the building, sometimes it takes quite a while to get through security, and the line outside the building can be rather long. So we do need to allow time for that. In this example, and for this team, we have four 4 meetings scheduled. And some of this, we may not have that many meetings for some of our teams just because, just the way the organization of the meetings turns out. But this is sort of a sample of how things will be organized. And then I mentioned going to the gallery. And then after the gallery, we'll have lunch provided. There'll be sandwiches and some salad options. And after that, we'll be going over to the Senate Privileges and Election Committee meeting. Or you can, on your own, go back and meet with legislators, either as a follow-up or if they weren't included in your team meeting. And then we'll come back at 4 o'clock for a feedback session. And as Liz pointed out, if you come back and say like, well, you know, Senator X really had some concerns about this and was really, didn't quite understand what we're trying to do here. And then we can give that feedback to Liz or other members of our team. I also did want to share another resource, and let's see if this one here is the, okay. For those of you who aren't familiar with this resource, it's really quite important. It's the Virginia Legislative Information System. And you can just Google Virginia LIS, and this page will show you almost everything you need to know about the legislature. And you can look up for example, bills by category. You can also find the offices and phone numbers for your delegates, your delegate or senators. You can call them or write them directly. It's a quite wonderful resource. The other resource, I'm not sure if we have that in our resource pages. VPAP also provides a phone application which has much of the information on delegates and senators. So I urge people to take a look at that. So Nancy, did I miss anything?
Oh, I think you pretty much covered it. I think the most important thing is, and we're going to be having a team meeting on Thursday, is to make sure that when you go in, you only have 15 minutes. Sometimes you don't even get to sit down. These groups are large, so you may be speaking in the hallway, but you have to have a well-organized meeting with having somebody make a statement on ranked choice voting, campaign finance, have somebody that reads Jane's notes on why we should have the National Popular Vote Compact, and we'll have these documents with these issue briefs. So they say, well, I don't really understand the National Popular Vote issue. You have something to hand off to them. Make sure that you get the name of whether you might not be meeting with the legislator, but the legislative assistant. Make sure that you get their information. We'll be having a short how to do lobbying, and make sure that the team leader finds somebody to take pictures, take notes, so that we have some type of documentation. And then finally, remember to let the legislators speak. I think that's really something that we get so overwhelmed with. We want to convey all this information, but as Liz said, people like, I remember Studemont all of a sudden having 2 groups come together. There must have been 20 people or something. And somebody was talking about importance of ranked choice voting, and the 2 legislative assistants were from Maine, it's like they have ranked choice voting. So it's really important to read your audience and interact with them and listen to what they say. Bill, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just one last thing is, these meetings you're having next week, this is just the beginning of the lobbying process. And keep in mind that you need to keep applying pressure to your legislators to get stuff done. And that involves writing letters, providing comments to bills as they come up in committee. So this is just one part of the process, and very few things get done just because you're in this 15-minute meeting. It's a great start, and it's, as Liz said, it's great to come and speak to your legislators and let them know what your positions are on these bills.
And one thing, yeah, and definitely one thing we want to make sure, we're trying to make sure that there are at least a couple constituents in the meeting. So we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to introduce the meeting because that's important for legislators to know the constituents are there. And half the battle, like Bill says, this is a journey. And the most wonderful thing about, even if you're meeting with their chief of staff, a legislative assistant, is building a bond and having a good relationship. Once you have a good relationship, sometimes it's even better with the legislative staff that they will respond to your emails. So this is a journey and a process. And so anyway, I just want to thank everybody for signing up. I think this will be the largest Democracy Day um, meeting that we've ever had. So it's pretty exciting. Bill.
Yeah, one last thing. I wanted to make sure that everybody's registered for the event. If you haven't registered, can you please register so we know how many people are coming, just for logistical purposes, like how many meals we should try and order, et cetera, et cetera.
So anyway, if there are any questions or we're really excited, thanks for signing up. I can hardly wait to see Jeff again. I haven't seen you for a year, so all our democracy colleagues. So Lauren, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Hi. First, just wanted to say thank you guys so much for organizing this. I'm so excited. My first time going to see any like legislation happen in Richmond. So thank you. But I also wanted to ask, Bill, since you were saying, please make sure you register. If I can convince any more friends to come with me in the next week, do you guys have like a hard deadline that you'd like registrations to be complete? And then if they did register late, maybe you could share this recording with them to prepare.
Yeah, Bill, answer that.
Well, no, it's just challenging to schedule all the meetings, and if we get a lot of people coming in saying, with 5 or 10 delegates we haven't scheduled a meeting with, then we're trying to do that. But sure, bring, have them register, and we'll do the best we can. And the other thing is, we'll do the best we can.
And Lauren, if they register, because Bill forced me to put a limit on 130. So if they register and say it's full, just send us an email. I'll put my email and address. Just send us an email and no problem. They just come down to Richmond and we'll add them to some of the teams. Anyway, it's great. Anyway, great. It will be exciting. We'll make a difference. I think this is the year to raise our voices on democracy. Talk to you all later. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.